The launch of the Hope by Logan collection was nothing short of a monumental, industry-defining triumph. After weeks of intense preparation, sleepless nights, and the heavy burden of corporate espionage, the highly anticipated fashion line debuted to overwhelming critical acclaim. The financial reports rolling into the executive offices were staggering, showcasing record-breaking sales that completely shattered all previous projections and left Forrester Creations trembling in the dust. The sheer magnitude of this victory was supposed to be a moment of absolute triumph for the newly formed Logan Creations, a shining testament to the strategic genius of its founders and a definitive proof that they could dominate the cutthroat world of high fashion. However, behind the glittering facade of this unprecedented success, a toxic, insidious seed of resentment was rapidly taking root in the darkest corners of the executive suite. Katie Logan Spencer, the brilliant mastermind who had orchestrated this massive corporate coup and risked her own family relationships to build this empire, fully expected to bask in the glorious warmth of her creation. Instead, as the revenues skyrocketed and the brand became a household name across the globe, Katie found herself experiencing a dark, unexpected, and consuming emotion. She was the chief executive officer, the founder, the powerful woman who had navigated treacherous waters to make this dream a reality, yet she was rapidly becoming a mere shadow in her own namesake company. The media's relentless, exclusive praise for Hope Logan Spencer became the devastating catalyst for this internal psychological destruction. Every major fashion magazine cover, every elite style blog, and every primetime television interview focused entirely and exclusively on the brilliant young designer who had bravely defected from her family's legacy at Forrester Creations. Hope was universally hailed as a bold visionary, a modern fashion icon, and the sole brilliant mind behind the season's most spectacular and profitable collection. Katie's name, on the other hand, was repeatedly relegated to the fine print, reduced to a mere footnote in the grand, sweeping narrative of Hope's triumphant rise to the top of the industry. This glaring, undeniable disparity in public recognition sparked an extreme, consuming jealousy within Katie, a venomous emotion that began poisoning her heart and twisting her perception of the niece she had fought so fiercely to recruit. The tension simmered dangerously beneath the surface for weeks, creating a volatile pressure cooker of unspoken grievances, bitter envy, and fractured egos. Katie watched silently from the sidelines as Hope soaked up the global adoration, her natural confidence blooming into what Katie's warped perspective now perceived as unchecked, insufferable arrogance. The hesitant young woman who had once agonized over leaving her Forrester legacy behind was now parading through the pristine halls of Logan Creations as if she single-handedly owned the entire building. Katie's deep-seated resentment grew exponentially with every glowing critical review and every record-breaking daily sales report. Her initial maternal pride in her niece's accomplishments warped into a dangerous, volatile resentment that threatened to consume absolutely everything she had sacrificed to build. The breaking point, the moment of no return, finally arrived during a lavish, star-studded party organized specifically to celebrate the unprecedented, historic success of the Hope by Logan line. The exclusive venue was dripping with opulent elegance, filled with flowing vintage champagne, the blinding flashes of paparazzi cameras, and the absolute elite of the Los Angeles fashion, entertainment, and business worlds. It was meticulously designed to be a night of joyous unity and celebration, a glorious victory lap for the entire team at Logan Creations. Yet, for Katie, the glittering, extravagant event felt like a deliberate, personal insult. To her jealous mind, the party was nothing more than a grand, illuminated stage designed specifically to highlight her own agonizing irrelevance while simultaneously elevating Hope to the untouchable status of a living legend. The climax of the evening, the spark that would ignite the powder keg, was inadvertently set into motion by none other than Bill Spencer. The charismatic, powerful business magnate took the stage, his booming, confident voice instantly commanding the attention of the entire packed ballroom. Bill was completely in his element, proudly gloating over the massive financial victory and the devastating, humiliating blow they had successfully dealt to Ridge Forrester and the entire Forrester Creations empire. But in his unchecked exuberance and desire to hype up their star asset, Bill made a fatal, catastrophic miscalculation. He raised his crystal glass high into the air and directed the entire room's rapt attention to the young designer, publicly and passionately praising Hope as the absolute soul of Logan. Those three specific words echoed loudly through the cavernous ballroom, striking Katie with the devastating force of a physical blow to the chest. For Bill, it was merely a charismatic, effective toast, a brilliant marketing soundbite to keep the media frenzy alive. But for Katie, it was the ultimate, unforgivable betrayal. She had built this company with her own two hands. She had boldly put her own name on the door, and she had navigated the most treacherous corporate and familial waters to make this massive success possible. To stand there and hear her own husband publicly declare to the world that her niece was the true spirit, essence, and soul of her namesake company was a profound humiliation that was simply too agonizing to endure. The extreme, suffocating jealousy that had been simmering within her instantly boiled over into a cold, calculated, and entirely ruthless fury. The festive atmosphere in the opulent room shifted imperceptibly as Katie slowly and purposefully approached the microphone. The thunderous applause gradually died down, replaced by a tense, expectant, and heavy silence. The elite guests eagerly anticipated a gracious speech of mutual admiration, a continuation of the joyous celebratory mood that had defined the evening. Instead, Katie stood rigid before the massive crowd, her expression a terrifying mask of pure, unadulterated ice. She looked out at the sea of expectant faces, her cold gaze finally locking directly onto Hope, whose radiant, happy smile was about to be shattered into a million irreparable pieces. In a shocking moment that will forever be etched into the dark, scandalous history of Los Angeles high fashion, Katie coldly and publicly fired her own niece. Her voice did not waver, and her hands did not shake as she delivered the devastating, career-ending blow right in the middle of the extravagant success celebration party. She boldly declared to the stunned, breathless audience that Logan Creations was a company with a singular, unified vision, and it simply did not need two leaders fighting for control. With ruthless, surgical precision, Katie publicly accused Hope of becoming far too arrogant, loudly claiming that the young designer had conveniently forgotten who had built the magnificent stage she was currently standing on. The dismissal was absolute, deeply humiliating, and brutally public. The immediate aftermath was a scene of sheer, paralyzing shock and utter disbelief. Hope stood completely frozen on the stage, the vibrant color rapidly draining from her face as the horrific reality of Katie's venomous words washed over her. She had sacrificed absolutely everything for this risky venture. She had betrayed Forrester Creations, she had alienated Steffy, Ridge, and her grandfather Eric, and she had endured the agonizing, soul-crushing guilt of lying to her own mother, all for the sacred promise of creative autonomy and professional respect at Logan Creations. Now, in a matter of mere seconds, she was violently stripped of her hard-earned title, her immensely successful collection, and her public dignity, cast out into the cold by the very aunt who had relentlessly and aggressively pursued her to make this defection happen. The ballroom instantly erupted into chaotic, deafening whispers as the invited press scrambled aggressively to capture the unprecedented, explosive scandal unfolding right before their greedy eyes. Blinding flashes from hundreds of cameras illuminated Hope's tearful devastation and Katie's stony, unyielding, and victorious resolve. The joyous celebration had instantly and violently morphed into a public corporate execution. Bill Spencer stood completely dumbfounded in the crowd, his trademark charismatic smile replaced by a look of horrified, dawning realization as he finally grasped the catastrophic, unintended consequences of his seemingly harmless toast. The catastrophic damage was already done, and the destructive shockwaves were rapidly rippling outward, destined to cause unimaginable collateral damage to everyone involved. News of the brutal, public firing spread like a raging wildfire across social media and news outlets, inevitably and quickly reaching the ears of Brooke Logan Forrester. Brooke was already harboring a deep, simmering, and highly volatile rage toward Katie for orchestrating this entire mess from the very beginning. Brooke had previously confronted her sister in a violent rage, smashing a monitor and officially declaring Katie her #1 enemy for poaching Hope and manipulating her away from the safety of Forrester Creations. But this new, horrifying development, this public, calculated humiliation and ruthless discarding of her beloved daughter, pushed Brooke completely and irrevocably over the edge of reason. The fierce, primal maternal instinct to protect her injured child ignited a volcanic, unstoppable fury within Brooke that could not be contained, reasoned with, or calmed by anyone, not even Rich. Brooke went absolutely crazy, storming into the narrative with a terrifying vengeance that sent shivers down the spines of everyone in her destructive path. She immediately sought out Katie, initiating a horrific confrontation that was heavily fueled by decades of suppressed sibling rivalry, deep-seated resentment, and a fierce, uncompromising, and protective love for her daughter. Brooke screamed at Katie with a volume and intensity that shook the very walls of the building, aggressively accusing her of using Hope as a mere disposable pawn to strike a blow at Forrester Creations, only to cruelly discard the young woman the exact moment her own fragile, insecure ego felt threatened by Hope's blinding success. The confrontation was explosive, physical, and deeply traumatic, a devastating, head-on collision of two powerful, stubborn women who shared the exact same blood but no longer shared even a shred of mutual respect or familial love. In that terrifying, defining moment, Brooke directly and unequivocally declared all-out war on her sister. This was no longer just a messy corporate dispute over fashion lines or a temporary family squabble that could be fixed with an apology. This was a brutal, unforgiving fight for survival and ultimate vengeance. Brooke fiercely vowed to completely destroy Katie, to meticulously tear down the very financial and structural foundation of Logan Creations, and to make her sister pay dearly for the agonizing, public pain she had so casually inflicted upon Hope. The words spoken between the two sisters were highly venomous, entirely unforgivable, and deeply scarring, violently severing the final, fraying threads of their once unbreakable familial bond. The tragic rift within the Logan family has now rapidly evolved into an unfillable, dark abyss. The beautiful sisterhood that had once been a foundational cornerstone of their lives, the powerful bond that had miraculously survived countless marriages, bitter betrayals, and heartbreaking tragedies, is now completely, utterly, and permanently shattered. Brooke and Katie now stand firmly on opposite sides of a vast, unbridgeable chasm, their hearts completely hardened by perceived betrayals and their brilliant minds focused solely on achieving mutual, total destruction. The legendary Logan name, once a shining symbol of family unity, feminine strength, and resilience, has tragically become a toxic battleground stained with the metaphorical blood of a broken, warring family. Tragically caught in the unforgiving crossfire of this apocalyptic family war is Hope Logan Spencer, a young woman who has been violently pushed into a profound, terrifying, and deeply isolating new identity crisis. She is no longer the beloved golden child and future leader of Forrester Creations, having burned those vital bridges to the ground when she made the fateful decision to defect. And now, she is no longer the celebrated, visionary lead designer of Logan Creations, having been publicly fired, humiliated, and stripped of her brand by her own flesh and blood. Hope is left completely and utterly adrift in a ruthless industry, stripped of her professional home, her creative outlet, and her fundamental sense of self. The psychological and emotional toll on Hope is unimaginable and deeply concerning to her husband, Liam, who desperately tries to hold the shattered pieces of his wife together. She must grapple with the devastating, crushing realization that her fierce ambition and her desperate desire to step out of the looming Forrester shadow have ultimately cost her absolutely everything she held dear. The lingering guilt of her initial betrayal against her grandfather Eric and her mother, compounded by the severe trauma of her public dismissal by Katie, threatens to pull her into a dark, isolating, and dangerous depression. She is now a brilliant designer without a label, a loving daughter caught in a vicious, unforgiving war between her mother and her aunt, and a broken woman desperately searching for a place where she truly belongs and is valued for her talent rather than used as a corporate pawn. As the suffocating dust slowly settles on this catastrophic, life-altering night, the entire landscape of Los Angeles high fashion is forever, irrevocably altered. Katie Logan Spencer now stands completely alone at the very top of her newly minted empire, financially victorious but emotionally isolated, having ruthlessly sacrificed her own family on the cold altar of her own fragile ego and extreme jealousy. Brooke Logan Forrester is entirely consumed by a dark, vengeful, and protective fury, ready and willing to burn the entire fashion world down to the ground to protect and avenge her injured child. And Hope Logan Spencer is left weeping in the shadows, facing a long, arduous, and painful journey to reclaim her stolen identity and rebuild her shattered self-worth in a world that has proven to be just as ruthless, cold, and unforgiving as it is beautiful and glamorous.